Hey everybody. Today I want to talk about this wonderful book called Psychopath Free. I don't know if you've seen this yet, but this book is truly like the Bible of these relationships with narcissists, psychopaths, sociopaths, people with histrionic or borderline personality disorder. And they call these the cluster B personality disorders. And the fantastic thing about this book, he chooses the word psychopath, but he goes through here basically the patterns of these relationships, and each of these relationships takes on a very predictable pattern. And what he says at the very end, too, is that people with cluster B personality disorders make up about 15 or 17% of the population, which is like at least 1 in 7 people. And that's eye-opening if you think about 7 people and 1 out of those 7 people. But also if you think about, how many of these people never get diagnosed? How many of these people live in the shadows? Because of all the narcissists, psychopaths, sociopaths, and other cluster B personality disordered people that I've met, you know, they never got diagnosed. They never went to a psychotherapist, but they very predictably followed in these exact same patterns. The relationship went down the exact same path. The result was exactly the same. And I think the point that Jackson MacKenzie is making in this book is that it doesn't really matter. We're not psychotherapists. We don't have to diagnose a person based on the DSM, and if they have, how many qualities out of this list, and they're, officially considered this and that. All of these cluster B personality disorders, what they have in common is narcissism, right? Or these narcissistic tendencies. Not all narcissists are psychopaths or sociopaths, but sociopaths, psychopaths, and the histrionic and borderline personality disordered people are narcissistic. So that's why they follow the same pattern. So that's what I want to talk about today is what Jackson MacKenzie is talking about in his book, Psychopath Free. If you haven't read this, definitely get this book. You can get the Kindle version if you're into online books, if you live outside of USA, if it's too hard to get an Amazon book delivered. You can get the book yourself if you want it, the physical copy. I like physical copies. I like to underline and write in the corners and stuff. It's just I turned it into a project. But, if I had read this book 10 years ago, 15 years ago, wow, all the heartache it would have saved me, right? Even if I had read this 5 years ago, I knew that there was a pattern, and it seemed like I just kept meeting these people who were it was the same pattern. It was a different face, but it was the same kind of person essentially that was showing up in my life. And, both Jackson MacKenzie, the author of this book, and Sandra Brown, who did these wonderful videos. If you haven't seen, she talks about the common traits of victims of psychopaths. And I really recommend watching that. Both her and the author of this book, Jackson MacKenzie, are talking about psychopathy being the biggest public health crisis facing society right now. And that says something. And essentially what happens is people are falling in love with them all the time, but it's not love. It's this carefully planned trick to make you think that it's love. It's a setup from the beginning, and it's a trap. And the name of the game is to break you down systematically, methodically, very calculatedly, your self-esteem, your sanity, your self-worth, everything that you are. There are 3 predictable phases in a relationship with a narcopath. The first one is idealization or love bombing. And that is when you meet this person and suddenly they're texting you all the time, they're calling you all the time, they want to spend all their time with you. It's just all day long, it's attention, 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 attention. And you might even be going wow, this is a little too much. Okay, but wow, he really must love me. He really must care. But what you also see is this pattern of flattery. And I'm going to make another video about that later, the difference between flattery and complimenting. But what you're going to get in this first idealization phase is a lot of flattering, a lot of attention, a lot of adoration, affection, false praise, essentially. And that's called the love bombing. The second phase is the devaluation. That's when they start to put you down. Now they're becoming mean. Now, like, the very things that they were exalting you for during the idealization phase, they're now humiliating you for, like, the exact same things, right? And then it's starting this yo-yo cycle, the sweet mean cycle, where they go back and forth between like attention, kind, loving, and then punishing you, devaluing you, putting you down. And then the final phase being the discard. And if you didn't leave them already during that devaluation phase, if you didn't see what's going on, then at some point they're going to discard you. They're going to throw you away like a disposable piece of garbage. And Jackson MacKenzie broke down these phases in a little bit different way, and it's really great. He talks about that idealization phase as personalized grooming. And that's really what it is. That's exactly what it feels like. It's like they manufacture the intensity, right, with the constant contact. They manufacture an addiction because, you know, all this affection and love and praise, it's triggering like dopamine in your brain. It's triggering the pleasure hormones. It's also triggering oxytocin, that bonding, trusting, connection hormone. And they're putting on this very false image persona that never existed, but you don't know that. And you start to think that this person is like the person of your dreams. Like it's like too good to be true, right? And they're pretending that they're just like you, that they share the same insecurities as you, that they like all the same things as you, and they're just utterly fascinated with you, or so you think. And then it moves into what Jackson MacKenzie calls the indirect persuasion. And that would be where, you know, they're creating like these subtle expectations and warnings to you. And it's sort of like they'll often bring in their exes, like, well, you know, my ex was just, you know, super jealous. Like, she couldn't stand when I would talk to other people and blah, blah, blah. And I know you're not like that. And my ex, you know, she was always asking me about this or that, or she was always, you know, and I know you're not like that. And so it sounds like a compliment, but it's not. This person is setting you up. They're letting you know what their expectations are very clearly, and they're watching your reaction. And at the same time, they're building you up. They're telling you, well, you're better than them, you know? And so what it does again is it tickles your pleasure sensors, and you're like, oh, okay, good. So they like me better than that person. So then they're already starting to manufacture that competition and triangulation, but that doesn't come in yet. And then, you know, what Jackson calls testing the waters. And that's when they start to provoke you in very subtle ways at first, you know, and you get to like catch glimpses to see, like, you know, how far are they actually pushing you? And these might come in the form of jokes, teasing, very subtle digs, you know, and then, just kidding, you know, but really what they're doing is slowly training you to ignore your intuition, right? You've now transferred your sense of approval from yourself to this person because you liked what they were saying at the beginning, you know, and they said it and they said it and they said it until they broke down that defense that you had. And then now you've like transferred your sense of approval into them. So they've slowly trained you to ignore your own intuition, your own inner sense of approval in favor of what they're saying, in favor of the addiction. And Jackson calls the second phase, which is the devaluation, the ID erosion, the identity erosion. And wow, isn't that true? So during that phase, what they're doing is that's when they're systematically breaking you down. But what are they breaking you down? Specifically, it's your identity, your sense of self. Right? And so they do this by first, you know, destroying your boundaries. They will set up situations and pretend like, you know, they had nothing to do with it. It just kind of happened that way, where they push your boundaries and they push you and they push you. And if you enforce that boundary, they'll say things like, you know, well, it's okay with all of us, but you have a boundary. And it's like, yeah, I do. Thanks for noticing. But, you know, the way that they're telling it to you is like, you know, you're not like us. You're not cool like us. You're not good enough like us, you know, and it's your problem to have this boundary, but you got to, you know, hold yourself strong. But when you don't realize what's happening, you're falling into this and you're going, oh, okay, well, maybe it is me. I mean, if you and everybody you're saying, you know, is your friend is okay with this boundary of like, somebody just jumping the fence and coming into my living room, and somebody just being in my living room suddenly, wow, without even knowing that somebody was coming in. Not okay. I put up a boundary there. But they're going to see your boundaries as a challenge. And they're going to try to destroy them because they know that boundaries are self-protection. They know that you have these boundaries up to protect yourself. So if they can destroy and destroy and destroy those boundaries, then you have no protection, right? They're also going to manufacture emotions during this time, in particular jealousy. They really like to work the angle of jealousy, and that's actually a projection. You know, they're incredibly, incredibly jealous people. So, you know, because they are narcissistic, rather than taking accountability for their feelings and dealing with their own feelings, what they do is they push them out on you. They do things to you so that you take on those feelings. And how they do that is they very carefully get you to believe that it's your fault, right? And that's your problem. So they're going to manufacture these emotions. They're going to start to bring around people and tell you now, you know, all that attention that you got at the beginning, now they're putting it in your face, that they're giving that attention to someone else. And it might be really blatant, and it might be more subtle. And it usually starts more subtle, and then it works its way up to getting really blatant. But essentially they just keep pushing and pushing and digging until you get to that point where you snap. And then they go, oh, see, look at you. You're so jealous and possessive. Look at your behavior. And they're so calm and cool, you know, because they have no emotion. They have no sense of empathy or love or compassion for another being. You're simply a tool, a pawn that they're using to extract what they want from you. And so then, you know, they get you to focus on your behavior and how it's your problem. And so then the focus goes away from the actions of abuse to your reaction to the abuse, and it's all your problem, you know. And then during this time comes what they call the word salad, right? And this is when the person is creating these circular conversations, and it's like what the circular conversation does is it just beats and beats and beats around this thing without ever really going to the center, to the truth, to what's real. And by the time you've come all the way around here, they've gotten you to like move along all these different tangents and twist and turn this thing. One, it's all your fault, it's your responsibility, you're the one who's blah, blah, blah. And two, you are utterly exhausted, like totally exhausted because you've been through this whole thing. And they're just going to say all sorts of stuff to make you unhinged. Like that's what they want. It's like they just push and push until you get unhinged. There comes the gaslighting, which is like this gross distortion of reality, getting you to doubt your own sanity. If it's an intimate relationship, there will definitely be sexual manipulation. And this could be, you know, what's called marital rape, where a husband forces sex on his wife. This could be just the opposite. This could be the wife who withholds sex from her husband as a tool. This could be the guy who's withholding sex from the girl and getting her to like beg him for sex once a week or once every 2 weeks, and then, you know, basically turn it around so that, you know, she's demanding and she's a whore and that sort of thing. And there's definitely going to be some sort of sexual manipulation. It could also be that they are either blatantly, you know, with somebody else, or they're telling you about how they want to be with somebody else, or they're constantly showing you pictures of what they desire sexually, or talking about so and so and how they desire them sexually. And it just goes on, and they'll work all these different angles until they find like what triggers you and like how they can finally get you to that breaking point. And they'll also do things to put you on the defense, you know, because if you're busy defending yourself, if they accuse you of false accusations, then you start to defend yourself. One, you look guilty. Two, all of your energy and attention is now going to defending yourself, right? Instead of paying attention to what they're doing, you're getting distracted from the point, which was the abuse that just happened. And then now they're getting you to try to defend yourself against something that you didn't do. And then comes the silent treatment, right? So when you don't give them what they want, when you don't shower them with the attention and the affection they want, when you aren't just like fascinated by how amazing they are, when they're like trying to put it in your face about how amazing they are, whatever it is that they do or they like, even if it's like playing video games, you know. And I mean, it could be like from, you know, being a cardiovascular surgeon to like the simplest thing. It doesn't matter. But the point is that they want you to be fascinated with them. If you're not feeding that and giving them the praise, then they're going to go find it somewhere else, and they're going to throw it in your face about how so-and-so is giving them, so-and-so is so amazing, and they think this about them. And they're so desired by all these people, and it's sort of like they're building up this persona, and then they give you the silent treatment when you're not doing that, or when you call them out on what they're doing. It's like very clear, and you call them out and they don't want to deal with that. Or when you react to the abuse, when you fly off the handle, like you've reached like the brink of your sanity, now you're really upset, like you freak out, and then they go, right? And then it's silence. And now you're the problem and it's all you. And so during the silent treatment, then all of this ignoring, like you're starting to believe that it's your fault. And that's part of the mind game. And then the covert gossiping, they're already starting to talk. This is part of the triangulation. They're already starting to talk with other people and get them all worked up against you. And what they're doing too is, because they're so cold-blooded, they can sit there with no emotion and trigger you and provoke you to react in front of other people. And then when you do that, they go, see what I mean? Do you see what I mean about so and so? Look how crazy they are. Look how jealous they are. Look how possessive they are. Look how close-minded they are, or whatever. They're just going to push you until that breaking point, and then they're going to triangulate other people against you. So now you've given them fuel. Now they go to so and so, the new supply, the next hand that's going to feed them, the next victim that they're going to suck dry. Of course, that person doesn't realize what's happening. At this point, they're in the initial idealization phase. You're at the end. They don't know. Right now, they're getting all the flattery, and they're getting all of that. See, you're not like so-and-so. So-and-so is crazy. I'm so glad you're not like that. And then comes the grand finale, as Jackson calls it, which is when, they've already been slowly showing interest in someone else, and they're letting you know that they're interested in someone else, and they're provoking you until you react. And then they're calling you overreacting and jealous, and then they give you the silent treatment or avoidance, ignoring you. And then you react by self-destructing. Like at a certain point, you implode, right? You explode at first, and then they go, look, see her. And so then you stuff it down, and then you implode and you self-destruct, right? And that can come out in any sort of way. But essentially what they're doing is they're just using all of that to convince other people that you're crazy, that you're the problem, that it's not them. See, they're so innocent, and they maintain this aura of childish innocence, but that's all false. And then they'll choose the most insensitive way to dump you, to walk away from you. And then they'll wave the new target in your face and be like, see, I'm with so-and-so, I'm giving all my attention and love to so-and-so. And it's just unbelievable, and the results are the same. Like every single time you feel like a part of you died, you feel this incredible emptiness, you're totally exhausted, you feel completely unhinged, you're probably doubting your sanity. And it's like you're holding on to your sanity by like the thinnest kite string at this point. And then you have to go heal. And, what Jackson is talking about in Psychopath Free about the healing is, he says, the first step is education. You got to get online, you got to get some books, you got to find out everything you can find out about this phenomenon. And the thing is that most people just don't know that narcissistic abuse is a thing. It's a real thing that happens when you're in it and you've not been exposed to these keyword terms. You don't know what it is, so this book is like the first place I would go if you're new to the scene, you're just figuring out what's happening to you, and you're just trying to make sense of it all. Read this book. Check out, they have a website too. It's a fantastic website. And then the second phase of the healing, he says, is validation. And that's when you join support groups, other people who have been through it. Because the thing is that, your friends and family, as much as they might love you and want to support you, if they haven't been through this kind of abuse, they just don't get it. They don't get it. And they might say things that they feel have good intentions, like, just get over it. Come on, get on with your life. But initially, you can't, because you have been through this mind fuck, like a total brainwashing experience where you don't even know what's real anymore. You don't know what's real anymore. And people who haven't been through it don't get it. That's why you need to seek out people who have been through it. You read their stories, you're not alone. You get some positive feedback, some encouragement from people That is so important. And on Facebook now, this is really possible to do online. You can find out other forums as well online. You can even find local groups that meet up to talk about this. It's not quite as common of a topic, such as, people who are family members or spouses or partners or friends of people who are alcoholics or people who are physically abusive or sexually abusive. It's just that it's just now starting to get more traction in the collective consciousness. I think it's really important to understand at the end of all this that you could drive yourself crazy trying to understand what happened. You could drive yourself crazy trying to figure out what made that person become like this. You could drive yourself crazy trying to figure out, well, are they a narcissist, or are they a sociopath, or are they a psychopath, or do they have histrionic, or do they have borderline? But the fact of the matter, and that's what I think, like, the point of Jackson at the end of this book was that it doesn't matter. Like, that's just a label, and thankfully I'm not a psychologist. Maybe you're not a psychologist. You don't have to diagnose people. So that's not your problem. But the only benefit to knowing those labels is the keyword search, because like until you found out what a narcissist was, until you found out what a sociopath was, until you discovered what gaslighting was, you didn't understand what was happening to you. So it's really helpful to know the keywords, to be able to look up resources, to gain more knowledge, to educate yourself, and at the same time let go of the need to label it. Because if you put that all under the umbrella of cluster B personality disorders, as they call it in the DSM of psychology, or you can just use the common term that people are using now, which is narcopath. It's just kind of a generic term to describe people who have these emotionally abusive, emotionally manipulative, narcissistically abusive tendencies. And it's so important to realize at the end that it is not your fault. You got tricked. Like, that was a setup the whole way. That person who set you up is a coward. They got in there, they lied, they deceived, they slowly eroded at your sense of who you are and what's real. And by the end, you probably felt so unhinged and confused and never knew where you stood with this person and felt like you were walking on eggshells. And then you didn't realize that sort of just bled through your entire life. Like, it didn't just stay localized in that relationship. Like, that bled through into your work, into your family life, into your friendships, into your creative projects. It took over your entire life. And then when you get out of that experience, you're utterly devastated because your whole life has been uprooted. And, Jackson MacKenzie talks about in this book that it could take 1 to 2 years generally for a person to heal after one of these experiences. So be patient with yourself. I don't think that there's an exact number that you can put on the healing process. I think that depends on a lot of things, on the person, on where they're at, on the intensity and the ongoing nature of the abuse that they endured, on how many repetitive relationships like this that they endured, on, how did it go back to childhood and have those issues been dealt with yet? And it is a process. It's not going to happen overnight, but healing is possible. And I just want to leave you with that message. Get the book. It's a fantastic book if you haven't read it yet. Thank you for tuning in today. I hope that was helpful for you. If there's anything I can help you with, please do leave a comment below. If you have any feedback on this video or questions, if you're looking for more resources for the self-healing process after narcissistic abuse, please feel free to sign up for my free webinars on Monday evenings at 6 p.m. Pacific USA time. Check out what time that is for you locally. We have a question and answer every week. If you can't attend live, I also post the free audio recordings on my website after each one of those episodes. I hope to see you there. Again, if there's anything I can help you with, please feel free to let me know. And remember, you are not alone. We're going to get through this together. Viva la revolución!